Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much again, Rod, for the incredible work you're doing here and for the opportunity to learn with everyone here together a little bit about something that we see in this week's Parsha. In this week's Parsha, it's very interesting. We're talking about the Tabernacle. We're talking about the construction, the architecture of this beautiful edifice that's going to be God's dwelling place in this world. And you wonder, God doesn't really need a home. God is loftier than a physical entity. But God says, I want to be among you. I want to be amongst the people. So God says, build me a home. Right? And that is the tabernacle. And in fact, when the Jewish people were in the desert for 40 years, there was this ark that was in the center, and all the tribes camped, 3 tribes per side, camped around the tabernacle. And that traveled with them. Wherever they went, the ark traveled, and the Jewish people, were moving wherever the ark moved as well. In fact, there were tremendous miracles that happened in the ark. Right? It says that it was Aron Noset Nosav. Imagine I try to lift this up, right, this podium, and it lifts by itself, and it carries me to where I want to move it to, right? That's the way the ark was. The ark carried those who were trying to carry it. Right? You think you're going to do me a favor? Let me show you something, right? So that was the ark, and we see that in the construction of the entire tabernacle, not only the ark, it was a place of tremendous miracles. And okay, we're in the middle of talking about all of this already. 3 Torah portions, and what happens? You have several different times in these portions that suddenly, indiscriminately almost, there's a mention, oh, by the way, keep my Shabbos, right? And then it continues to go back to the building of the tabernacle, build it like this and build it like that, and don't forget my Shabbos, right? And it continues going again and again, and you're like, where does this come in? And we know that there's no mistake in the Torah, not even one syllable, right? There's no error in the Torah. So how can it be that the Torah, is in the middle of talking about the construction? Remember my Shabbos, right? Don't light a fire on Shabbos. And it continues talking about the construction again. And then you see this over and over again. So there's no coincidence. So we'll talk about that for a second. Okay, we'll talk about that. And you think, what would the comparison be between the tabernacle and Shabbos? So I saw a lovely idea, and that is that the Shabbos and the tabernacle are very, very similar in that the tabernacle was meant to be a place, a physical place where God can be close to us. Right? It's a physical dwelling place where God can be near us. What is Shabbos? Shabbos is a time where God's spiritual closeness is within us. Shabbos is a time which is very, very different than any other time of the year, or the week, for that matter. I want to read to you what it says in the Talmud. The Talmud in Tractate Shabbat 10b and in Beitzah 16b says the following. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu LeMoshe. The Almighty God says to Moses, Matana tova yesh li bebet kinasai. I have a wonderful gift in my treasury. V'Shabbat shma, and its name is Shabbat. V'ani mevakesh litna li Yisrael, and I want to give it to the Jewish people. Lech v'hodiyim, notify them. Let them know that I have this magnificent gift, and who do I want to give it to? I want to give it to the Jewish people. You know that Shabbos is the one commandment, the observance of Shabbos is the one commandment that is mentioned more than any other mitzvah in the Torah. No less than 12 times. In fact, you go to the 10 Commandments, mitzvah number 4, right? Commandment number 4 is keep the Shabbos. Right? Incredible. I want to read to you what the Midrash says about this. Right? This commandment includes the prohibition against performing any of the 39 principal labors forbidden on Shabbos. Now, what are the 39 principal labors? Just to give a brief introduction. So, it's because there's so much connection between, or I would call it juxtaposition, between Shabbos and the Tabernacle. So our sages tell us the secrets. And that is that any labor that was prohibited to be done in the that was done in the Tabernacle is prohibited to do on Shabbos. And it's broken down to 39 different categories of labor. Right? I'll give you an example. Right? We know, right? You ask anybody, you're allowed to work on Shabbos? No, you're not allowed to work on Shabbos. The Torah tells us don't work on Shabbos. People use this terminology, work on Shabbos. It's incorrect. Right? There's no prohibition to work on Shabbos. Let me tell you what that means, okay? So we decide Saturday morning, you know what? Let's reorganize this place, right? We're going to face that direction, right? So we're going to move all the furniture, we're going to move everything around. Is that work? It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work, right? We'll all agree. We'll be sweating, like, schlepped all these chairs, the tables, moved everything all around, and now, is that work? And so we agree it's work, right? You imagine you had to move couches, you had to move desks and all that stuff. We all agree that's work. Now, let's get a light switch, right? A light switch. Lifting that light switch, would that be work? That's not work, right? But lifting the light switch is prohibited on Shabbos. Moving the furniture is not prohibited on Shabbos, right? So, is it work? It's not work. So we have to define what work means. Our sages tell us work means creative labor, right? Creative labor. Moving furniture is not creative labor. It may be toilsome. It may not be the respect and honor of Shabbos to do it on Shabbos, but it's not prohibited. Flicking on a light switch, although it's not burdensome and it's not work, it is creative labor, right? And we can get into the whole scientific aspect of it, creating a circuit, right, which causes the electricity to turn on, or the light to turn on, or to turn off, right? You know, I look at my phone, right? So you got one little button here, and that turns it on, right? It's not work. So the terminology work is used very loosely in the world, but in truth, it's not work that's prohibited on Shabbos. It's creative labor. Oh, okay, so now we have a definition here, right? So Torah tells us you should not do any work on Shabbos, creative labor, right? It's prohibited on Shabbos. There are 39 different categories of work, creative labor, that are prohibited. For example, baking, right? Baking is considered also a creative labor, right? Because you're creating something which is edible now, right? So if you put your uncooked meat into the oven on Shabbos, that would be a problem on Shabbos. Okay, so those are the 39 different laws, and I highly recommend that in your journey in learning more about Judaism, you get the book. It's actually a four book set. It's called the 39 Melachot. You have it here? All right. But, yeah, if you can, please. You can only bring one, which is written by Rabbi Ribiat and published by Feldheim Publishers. It is absolutely incredible. It'll give you from the basics the entire. Now I'm a little prejudiced because my sister provided some of the photography for that. Okay, but it really is a fantastic book. All right, so that's if you want to know more about the 39 principal labors. Furthermore, Shabbos should be distinguished by our making a bracha. Well, this is also a fantastic book, also published by Feldheim, right? But there's another one. This is also very good. That one was written 20 years after this. It's much more. It has much more detail to application of laws that aren't yet in this one. But this is the staple, all right. So we start Shabbos with a blessing, and we end Shabbos with a blessing. Right? What's the blessing that we begin Shabbos with? So we have the candle lighting, but we also have the kiddush. Right? We make kiddush on a glass of wine or grape juice, and then we end Shabbos with Havdalah. We end it with a blessing. It's one big mitzvah that we do the whole Shabbos. Very interesting, though. Right? Very interesting thing. Why do we start Shabbos with a candle? We end Shabbos with a candle as well. You ever wonder about that? Right? What's with this fire? Oh, it's very romantic. Jews are romantic. We know that, right? All right. But why do we start Shabbos with a candle?
To bring in the light.
To bring in the light. Okay.
The bride and the Shabbos.
Okay. So
The meal.
open up your hearts and minds to this. Okay. It's an amazing idea. All right. Okay. What is this? This is a pen, right? Now this is a pen, and what's going to happen when I drop it? It's going to fall, right? This is what we call materialism, right? It's physical. I feel it. You can do it. Even this featherweight piece of paper, right? It's material. What happens when I leave go? It's going to fall, right? Why? There's something called gravity, right? Everything in this world will eventually fall because there's the laws of gravity, except for one thing. Fire. Fire defies gravity. It goes up, right? We know heat rises and everything, right? But the idea is that a candle. Okay, so let's understand for a second. Shabbos represents what? Not this, right? This is materialism. This pulls us down. Shabbos, we're turning it over. We're lifting everything up. We work all week, busy, physical. Shabbos, we're taking all that physical and we're elevating it. How do we do that? We do that with a candle. We light the Shabbos candles. We're saying all of the physical that we've done the entire week. Now we're taking a break from all of that. We're going to raise it up. But there's another interesting thing. Is that fire, although it defies gravity, there's another dimension to it. Is that it is a combination of physical and spiritual together. Right? So this, I know that it's here because I feel it. Right? I know that it's here. If I didn't feel it, it probably wasn't here. Right? Fire, I don't feel it because it's nothing. But I feel it because it burns. Right? So it's a combination of physical and spiritual. What we need to do on Shabbos, our sages teach us, is we need to take all of the physical that we've been busy with the entire week, and now don't get rid of it. Elevate it. Prepare it for Shabbos. It's very interesting. In every language, the days of the week have names, except in the Hebrew language. There's no names to Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It's day number 1, day number 2, day number 3, day number Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, Yom Revi. It's very creative, right? Right? Why? You know why? Because in Judaism, the most important part of our life is Shabbos. So Sunday isn't Sunday. It's the first day to the next Shabbos. Right? The center of our universe is Shabbos. All we're busy with is like, Shabbos. The Talmud tells us an amazing story. The great sages would go on Sunday, they'd be at the meat market, and they'd see this beautiful cut of kosher meat and say, this is for Shabbos. And then they'd go back to the marketplace on Monday, and they'd see a finer cut of meat. And they'd say, this one's for Shabbos. And every day, why? Because the idea is we always have Shabbos on our mind. It's the greatest gift God had, and the greatest gift that God has given us. It's a day where we're elevated above the physical. Why? Go back to what we said earlier. God's presence is closer to us on this day. In fact, it tells us that on Shabbos, we have something which is called a neshama yitera. We have an elevated soul that's infused in us on Shabbos. You ever realized, if you go to someone's home on Shabbos, they're very tired on Shabbos. I'm so tired. Right? Not because they had such a busy week alone, but because now they have this elevated spiritual soul. It's burdensome on the physical body. Okay? So we say Vayivarech. This is part of what we say in the Kiddush as well. But this is part of the beginning of creation. Chapter 2, Genesis, verse 3. Vayivarech Elokim et Yom HaShvi'i vayikadesh oto ki vo shavat mikom malachto asher bara lim lasot. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he ceased from all his creative work, which God had brought into being to fulfill its purpose. So Shabbos is really the culmination of everything. If you imagine, okay, close your eyes for a second. Okay, everyone close your eyes. You're on your dream vacation. Okay, you're on the beach. You don't have your cell phone, no Facebook, right? No YouTube, right? You have nothing bothering you. I remember when I started giving this example, there's no fax machines, right? Right? No pagers and no fax machines, right? So you're sitting on the beach and you're relaxing, drinking your pina colada, right? And you have your children, your family, your spouse sitting next to you, and you hear the waves, and it's so peaceful, it's so calm. That's not even close to Shabbos. You can open your eyes. Not even close to Shabbos. It was a great place, right? We were there, right? You could just continue for one more minute, right? That's not even Shabbos yet. You know why? Because on Shabbos we're infused with an elevated sense of spirituality. All right? It's a whole different ballgame. We're on so much of a higher level on Shabbos spiritually. Okay, let me continue here. Furthermore, Shabbos should be distinguished by our making a bracha when Shabbos begins, making a blessing when it begins and when it ends. This we fulfill by making Kiddush and Havdalah. Shabbos should be singled out with special delicious foods and by one's wearing special garments. Okay, so we eat special foods on Shabbos, right? The finest foods that you can imagine on Shabbos. Right? You have a choice whether or not you're gonna have those barbecue ribs Thursday night or Friday night for Shabbos. Have it for Friday night, right? Special foods, right? You'll see in a second it's worth it, right? There's another thing though. We wear our finest clothes, right? This tie is a weekday tie, right? This is a tie I'll never wear on Shabbos because I have a special tie for Shabbos, right? We have special clothes that are specifically for Shabbos. We have shoes that are for Shabbos. We have shirts that are for Shabbos. Why? Shabbos is that special day that it just doesn't, it's such a holy day, it's such a special day. My special clothes are reserved for that day. A suit that's only worn for Shabbos, right? Okay, it can also be worn for holidays like Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and Sukkot and Shavuot and Passover, right? And Pesach. But there's special garments that are worn for Shabbos. My kids, since I grew up, right, we had Shabbos clothes. And we shower before Shabbos. We prepare ourselves. It's like the Queen is coming, right? The Queen is coming. We're getting ready, right? That's exactly the way it is. In fact, what I was looking for earlier was for a midrash, a fascinating midrash. Midrash tells us, I think I know where it is now. Okay, now I'm just remembering. Well, it's fine. The midrash tells us that Shabbos came to God with a complaint. Shabbos was unpleased. Sunday was married to Monday. Tuesday was married to Wednesday. Thursday was married to Friday. And Shabbos had no mate. So he came to complain to God. Who's going to be my partner? Who's going to be my mate? God says, don't worry. The Jewish people will be betrothed to you. The Jewish people will treat you like a queen. And every week they'll wear their finest clothes for you. And they'll buy flowers and they'll dress up their house. And they'll have the finest foods for you because you're the queen. And what do we do in a synagogue Friday night? We sing Lecha Dodi, which is saying, come my bride. And what do we do when we say Boi Chala, Boi Chala? Just like you do by any wedding. When here comes the bride, right? The bride comes, she's walking into the room. What does everyone do? Everybody stands up and turns to the back. That's exactly what we do in every synagogue across the globe. As soon as Shabbos comes in, we say, Boi chala, Shabbat malkita. Come, bride. Come, bride. The Shabbos queen. And we turn around, we're all facing the rear entrance, right? The Shabbos queen is coming in. This is our queen. Right? We're welcoming in the Shabbos queen. It's very interesting. If you've been to a Shabbos meal, you'll know that we sing Shalom Aleichem. Right? What's that song, Shalom Aleichem? We're welcoming in the angels. Which angels? Well, what are you talking about, right? Well, a bride has a whole entourage. She doesn't go herself. She's escorted, right? Flanked by all sides with bridesmaids, right? Well, guess what? The Shabbos angel, the Shabbos queen is no different. They're angels that escort the Shabbos queen. And these angels, escort the Shabbos queen from the synagogue all the way home. And when it comes into the home, if the Shabbos home, the Midrash tells us this, the Shabbos home is dressed beautifully, right? By the way, Shabbos table is covered with a white tablecloth. It's royalty, right? And it's beautifully set up. That's when we have our china. We bring out our finest cutlery. It's Shabbos, right? Shabbos queen. And we have it all decked out. Everything is ready to go. And then the positive angel says, so shall it be next week. And the negative angel is compelled to say, Amen. And if, God forbid, the opposite is true and it's not ready for Shabbos, the negative angel says, so shall it be next week. And the positive angel needs to reply, Amen. So shall it be. Right? So we have these angels, and we sing Shalom Aleichem, welcome. Welcome into our home. We say, Ba'achem, come in peace. And we say, Barchuni l'shalom, bless us with peace. And then we say, thank you very much, you've escorted the bride, now you can leave. Right? You see that everything is in order here. Now you can leave, and Shabbos is fully underway. All right? A person is reimbursed for all expenses which he incurs in honor of the Shabbos. This is a promise that our sages tell us. All right? It's brought down numerous places. Although every person's income is determined on Rosh Hashanah for the entire year, the amount spent in honor of Shabbos, Yom Tov, right, and a few other exceptions, is not included in that fixed amount. Right? So, if a person decides that he wants to have a dishonest business deal, right, he can cheat a little here, cheat a little there, you should know it's never going to work out. Because you're not going to have 1 penny more than is predestined by the Almighty from Rosh Hashanah. Not 1 penny more and not 1 penny less. Except for your expenses in honor of Shabbos. Expenses that a person has, he says, I don't have enough money. Guess what? God says, this one's on me. This one's on me. Every Shabbos, the expenses of Shabbos are on the Almighty. If he spends more, Hashem will repay him more. If he skimps, Hashem will accordingly return less. The Shabbos day should be a time for spiritual pursuits, for Torah study, and for prayer. Right? It's a time to reconnect. You know that Moses negotiated Shabbos with Pharaoh? When the Jewish people were in Egypt, Moses came to him and says, I don't understand. What's your strategy here with the Jewish people? Now, of course, Pharaoh didn't know yet that he was a Jew, right? So he says, what do you mean what's my strategy? Work them. He says, no. If you want to have longevity, if you want these workers to be, you got to give them 1 day off every 7 days. He says, it's brilliant. That way they have 1 day of rest, and then the other 6 days they work harder, and they're rejuvenated. And of course, that day he negotiated was the Shabbos. So the Jews had off on Shabbos, even in Egypt, right? But for our own psyche, we need a day off. I think there's a problem today in America or in the world that we have a 5-day work week, right? So we're not producing enough for our own health, I think. Don't throw stones at me, okay? A person should not think about the unaccompanied labor of the week, the unaccomplished labor of the week, but rather divert his mind from his mundane occupations. This is a time to unplug. You're not sitting at that beach for 5 minutes. You have 25 hours of Shabbos. It is the greatest gift that God has given to humanity is the day of Shabbos. It's a day of absolute rest. Whoever rests on the seventh day testifies by that rest that Hashem has created the world on 6 days and rested on the seventh. That is the Midrash. Right? That is all from the Midrash, what I read. So I want to talk about a few ideas over here. First is very interesting. We know that Shabbos is the seventh day. It's interesting that all of the foods that we have on Shabbos have a numerical value that equals 7. Okay, so let's start with candle. Anybody know what a candle is in Hebrew? It's called a ner. A ner. Okay? Ner is nun, which is 50, numerical value of 50, and resh is 200, which is, you have 5 and 2, which is 7. All right? You got that? All right? Ner is 5 and 2, that's 7. Dog, fish. We eat fish on Shabbos. By the way, you ever heard of gefilte fish? I'm sure you heard of gefilte fish, right? By the way, the one in the jar is awful. Don't eat it, okay? That's not what God had in mind, okay? All right, I hope I don't get sued by... It's awful. That's not what it's about. But if you go to Belden's down south in Houston, right? You go to Belden's, you can buy the loaf, the gefilte fish loaf, and then you can just cook it. I can give you my Texas recipe.
You tell it now. Go ahead.
I told you, right? Right? You just take your salsa, take the hot spicy salsa, and you pour it on top of it. While it's in a pan, put it in the oven, bake it, and it is outstanding. Okay. But so where did it come from? It's very interesting where it came from, right? One of the 39 categories is that you're not allowed to select. You're not allowed to select bad from good. Because one of the processes that you need in order to bake bread is you got to take out the kernels from the flour, right? So you're not allowed, because they needed to bake bread for the Tabernacle. It's one of the prohibited actions on Shabbos is to remove bad from good. So if you have a watermelon, you're not allowed to take out the pits in order to eat the watermelon. You can eat the watermelon and then spit out the pits, right? Because you're not taking the bad from the good. You're eating the good, and whatever's left over is left over. You can spit that out, right? But, so I'll give you an example. You have sushi, right? And you like a vegetarian or California roll, right? And they give you a salmon roll, by mistake. So you don't like that fish, or whatever it is, okay? You're allowed to take out the fish so you can eat the rest of it. No, because to you, as an individual, that is bad, right? So you're not allowed to take the bad from the good. Now, if the person is sitting next to you, by the way, this is how you have to understand that the halacha, although the rules of clad iron, right, they're very, very firm. However, it is subjective to the individual. Because to the person sitting next to you at that same dinner table, for them, the salmon is not a problem. They like the salmon. So for them to remove the salmon is not a problem. Because for them, it's not bad from good. You understand? So you can even ask them, can you remove it? Well, sure, I love that salmon. I'll have that. Right? Not a problem. This is just an interesting thing. I don't want to confuse you. But that's, right, and it can get very confusing. But it's a very interesting idea. Now, if you're eating fish, the way people used to eat fish, right? Today you can go to Costco and you can buy this beautiful Atlantic salmon, and it's clean as can be. It's boneless. There's no bones there. They did the work for us. It's amazing. But that used to not be the case. Back in the olden days, right? They didn't have Costco, and they didn't have this service for us. So you would get fish with bones. Right? And the problem is you can't remove the bones in order to eat the fish, but you want to enjoy your fish, it gets complicated. So what they would do is they would grind up the fish with the bones, right? And it would be ground so finely you wouldn't be able to taste or feel the bones, right? And that's what gefilte fish was. It's just that they shouldn't separate the bad from the good on Shabbos. There's just one big cholent, right? Wrong food, but right. They just mixed it up, and that was it. And they ate that. And that's how gefilte fish came to be. It was downhill from there, right? No, but it's a beautiful idea. By the way, we have wine on Shabbos, right? Yayin. What is the letter Yud? The letter Yud is 10, so that's 1, right? Remove the zeros, right? You have 10, 10, and 5. For Nun, Nun is 50, right? So it's 1, 1, and 5. How much is that? That's 7, right? You do the same thing for Basar, right? For Basar is meat, right? It's Bet, which is 2, Shin, which is 300, which is 3, and Reich, which is 2 again, right? 2, 3, and 2. Again, 7. All the foods, everything is the numerical of 7, right? Bringing you back that same number 7. Okay? So, we light the Shabbos candles. We're ready for Shabbos, right? We go to synagogue. We welcome the Shabbos queen. We turn around. We face the back. The Jewish people, don't forget, we are married to Shabbos. Shabbos is the most important day. In fact, I'll tell you a very interesting story, right? There was this young girl who grew up in a secular Jewish home. This is in Israel. And she lived in a religious neighborhood. So her parents sent her to the religious day school there. It's close by to her house. So they sent her to this religious day school. So she goes there. And of course, she gets more involved, more educated in Jewish practice. And she wants to observe more. But the family says, no, that's not us. That's not us. We're not doing that. So she was a little bit devastated. She put up a little fight, but the parents ultimately said, not in our house. Friday afternoon, she goes to the little market near her house, and she wants to buy something special for Shabbos. So she goes and buys, and the owner, the shop owner, tells her, why don't you just take these 2 candles? Right? Take these 2 candles. And these were not regular Shabbos candles. These were Yartzeit candles. He knew that she wasn't from a religious family. He figured she probably came for Yartzeit candles. And the Yartzeit candles are the memorial candles. When someone passes away, that same day, every year, the soul is elevated, and people is accustomed to light a candle. Right? To light a candle in memory of that soul. Right? So it's sort of like for the deceased, we elevate the soul by lighting that candle. Again, we can use that same idea of the fire, elevated, okay, the soul. Okay. So, her parents, Friday night, she goes up to her room, and she lights the Shabbos candles. Her parents, go check up on her a little bit later, and they see these 2 memorial candles there, right? So they ask, what's going on? So she says, well, that's for Daddy, and that's for Mommy, right? And she meant just for the Shabbos candles. I lit a Shabbos candle for you, but the parents, it hit them like, what? So they said, they realized if we distance ourselves from Shabbos, what we're doing is we're cutting ourselves off from the Jewish people. And of course, that inspired them to be more connected to Shabbos, and eventually, that was the beginning of their journey to become fully Shabbat observant. But it's an unbelievable idea, is that we see that whenever the Jewish people, God forbid, right, have ever left the Shabbos, there was always the turning point of where they were lost completely from their religion. So Shabbos is really the glue that holds the Jewish people together, which is why, very interestingly, Jewish communities have always survived as a community. That's because on Shabbos, you had to be next to other Jews, because you can't travel outside of the neighborhood, right? So you had to be in walking distance. You can't even carry. If you don't have a roof, right, which is like a fence around the neighborhood, making it all into one domain, so to speak, right? Almost like a single domain, you can't even carry from your house right outside. So over here in this neighborhood, if we were here for Shabbos, right out here, we wouldn't be able to carry in the parking lot, because this is a private domain in here. Outside is a public domain. You can't carry. It's one of the 39 prohibitions. You can't carry from one domain to another domain, right? the Jewish people were always obligated, because of Shabbos, to stay as a community. Suburban Jewry never existed. Right? It's an incredible thought. Think about it. How did we survive 3,300 years? Because of Shabbos. Shabbos is the glue that keeps us together. You don't have a choice. You got to be in a Jewish community. Okay. Now, interestingly, the Jewish people in the desert, we know they were fed. How were they fed? They're in the desert. With the manna, right? Now, interesting that on the sixth day, on Friday, they got a double portion, which is why at the Shabbos table we have two challahs. Right? The challah is the bread, the special bread that we have on Shabbos, which, by the way, is braided. Right? Many times has 6 braids. Why does it have 6 braids? Because those are the 6 days of the week that now comes together with a Shabbos. It all comes together. Right? Very interesting that when we end Shabbos, we also end Shabbos with candles. I didn't get to it yet, right? But it's a very special candle. There's a special Havdalah candle. Anybody know what's different with a Havdalah candle than a regular candle? It's braided. Why is it braided? It's 2 wicks. It has to be 2 wicks. Sometimes they have 10 wicks or 20 wicks. It's fine. But it has to have at least 2 wicks. Why? And they're intertwined. Because what we're saying is Shabbos was so holy and so uplifting. What we want is that the weekday should also be uplifting. So we intertwine these two and say, let the inspiration from Shabbos carry over to the week. That's what we want. We want it to have an impact onto the rest of our week. Right? That's why we have those special Havdalah candles. But back in the desert, there was the manna. The manna was a double portion. Right? That's why we have the 2 breads that represent the same miracle that the Jewish people had, but also to distinguish from the rest of the week. The rest of the week, when we make, we start our meal, we start it with a piece of bread. On Shabbos, we start it with 2. Again, there's more blessing. There's more to it, right? We also have the special foods we mentioned. Imagine someone told you, I want you to tell me if the light is on in this room. Is it light or is it dark? You say, well, that's pretty simple. Right? What are you going to do? Is it light? Yeah, how do you know that? You see it. Okay. I tell you, no. I don't want you to use your eyes. I want you to smell. Okay, smell. Tell me if the light is on. Is that going to help? How about try to taste it? Taste it. Right? I don't know. It's hard to know. Right? What is Shabbos? Right? It's something that you can't, it's not tangible because it's in our soul. The whole soul is elevated. Our whole spirituality is elevated through Shabbos. I mean, it's not just, it happens to be, by the way, that there was a great emperor who was close to one of the great sages. The Talmud relates the following story. Talmud says that the emperor came to the rabbi's house during the week and had dinner with him. And the food was okay. The food was good food. And he came to the rabbi and he ate the same exact food, but it was Shabbos. And it was completely different. He said, I don't understand. What's different? We had the same exact dish on Tuesday night, and now we have the same dish tonight, and it's different. He says, there's something special. There's a special spice we put in. Right? There's a special spice. And that special spice, this is the Talmud saying, it's not a storyteller, right? Special spice is called Shabbos. Shabbos makes everything different. Right? Our eyes, it's another day of the week. Right, we can get our errands done. We drop off the cleaners. You can pick up the cleaners. No, not Shabbos. That's not what it's about. It's about we have to sense it in a whole new spiritual. We have to use other sensors. We have to use our neshama. We have to use our soul. And that is how we can distinguish what Shabbos is. It's not with physical senses, right? We're not going to have, today is just the day of Shabbos. I'll be able to taste it. I'll be able to hear it, or I'll be able to see it. Everything is going to look the same, and perhaps it'll even taste the same. But when we have Shabbos, and we in our soul we can connect, it is connecting on a much different level. Then we can feel that Shabbos. We can feel it on a higher level. I want to read to you something here. So we say the fourth of the Ten Commandments: Sheshet yamim ta'avod v'asita kol malachtecha. 6 days you shall work. What type of work? Create, right? You can exactly. V'yom hashvi'i Shabbat la'Hashem Elokecha. On the seventh day is Shabbos for Hashem your God. Lo ta'aseh kol malacha. You shall not do any creative labor. Ata uvincha uvitecha avdacha ve'amatcha uve'emtecha ve'gercha shebisharecha. You shouldn't, and your sons and your daughters and your servants and your animals and your visitors, right? Anybody that's in your domain, anyone that's in your home, no work on Shabbos. Because for 6 days God created the heavens and the earth. He worked, he toiled, he labored. The seas and everything that's in the seas. But God rested on the seventh day. That's it. No more work. Now it's above everything. And so God blessed the seventh day and made it holy. That's from the Ten Commandments. Right? God made it holy. It's not a holiness like any other day. It's a holiness that we need to immerse ourselves in it. We need to prepare it. In fact, I have a picture of a great sage from Jerusalem on my bulletin board in my house. And right under the picture of the sage, it says a quote that he used to say. He says, "Don't let Shabbos wait for you. You wait for Shabbos." That means this is what he used to do. They say that he used to sit on his porch for a few hours before Shabbos. You're like, what are you sitting here? He said, I'm waiting for Shabbos. Shabbos is coming, right? I'm waiting, right? That's how prepared we need to be for Shabbos, because Shabbos is a whole new experience. It's like the most uplifting experience in the world. More than Buddha, right? More than yoga, right? More than anything you can possibly imagine is Shabbos. Who told us this? God. Right? Hashem in His own Torah tells us this. 10 Commandments. Right? The days of the week don't have their own name because they're related to Shabbos. Their entire identity is relative to their relationship with Shabbos. Okay? The Midrash says, when the Jewish people were gathered at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, God told them that heaven would be the reward for keeping the commandments. The Jews asked God, how do we know that heaven is so great? Like, what? Okay, we'll keep Shabbos for what? Right? For heaven. Well, who said heaven's so good? Well, so God says, how about a free sample to see if it's worthwhile? Right? And that's what we say. Shabbos is a piece of heaven. It's a 60th of heaven. Right? It's just tranquility. It's this peacefulness that comes with Shabbos. God wasn't upset. He knew that heaven is where we experience the pure and unadulterated pleasure of the infinite God. So He said, no problem. I'll send you the sample, and the sample is Shabbos. Thus the sages say, Shabbos is a taste of heaven on earth. That's what it is. If heaven is pure spirituality, then Shabbos is a taste of that experience. Okay? Shabbos is exactly that. It's the taste of spirituality. It's the taste of holiness. It's very interesting that there was a student, a story that's told, I heard it said by Rabbi Noach Weinberg from Esha Torah. He says an amazing story. He met a student who was backpacking around the whole state. He was backpacking through Europe, and he ended up in Israel. This Jewish backpacker. So he tells him, tell me, how was your trip? How was your, everything you saw in Israel? He says, listen, I know they say that Israel is the Holy Land and all that stuff, but he says, come on. He says, I traveled the entire land. There's no holiness any place. So I didn't see, he says, really? He says, you went to Tiberias and you didn't sense holiness? There's nothing. He says, and you went to he lists them all there. You went to Tzfat and you didn't see any holiness? No holiness. Jerusalem, Western Wall, nothing, no holiness. Rabbi, the whole thing's baloney. So the rabbi says to him, tell me, how about bafuf sticks? Did you see them? He says, bafuf sticks? He says, yeah, bafuf sticks. They're all over the place. You didn't see them? He says, I don't know what they are. Tell me what they are. Maybe I saw them. He says, come on, you can't walk into the city and not see it. If you went to Tiberias, you had to see bafuf sticks. He says, Rabbi, if I don't know what bafuf sticks are, how can I see them? So the rabbi says, can you tell me what holiness is? You say it's no place. But what is holiness? Right? And that's what we need to develop, the taste to what holiness is. Right? If we don't know what holiness is, what are we looking for? Right? We don't know what to look for. So we need many, many hours to discuss what holiness is and to get into the frame of mind of holiness. But holiness can't, the contradiction to holiness is materialism. Right? That's the direct contradiction. Now, in Judaism is something unique. In other religions, what they say, that if we abstain from materialism, then we can have holiness. In Judaism, we don't say that. They say you can elevate the physical. You can elevate the materialistic and make it spiritual, and you can make it holy. Right? We see that. We see a number of examples. We see, for example, when Abraham purchased the lot to bury Sarah. So what does it say right after he purchased it? He says, okay, the Torah elaborates about, that he gave the 400 coins to the children of right? And it goes through the whole story, and then it says, and Abraham acquired the field. Anybody remember the exact terminology? Vayakam ste Ephron. Right? And the field of Ephron got elevated. Sages ask, what type of term is that? Got elevated? What do you mean? Abraham just bought it. No. Abraham, because he was so holy, right? He changed the spiritual dimensions of this property now. This property was no longer just a piece of earthly possession. It was uplifted because of who he was. Now that he owned it, he elevated it. He made it spiritual. He gave it purpose. Right? Physical things can be uplifted. Right? In fact, there's a website which I highly recommend you get to know. It's called TorahAnytime.com. Right? It's phenomenal. You have thousands of classes there. It's amazing. And their slogan is God's purpose for the internet. The internet has a lot of impurity, but we can make it holy. Right? Everything physical could be used to pull us down, or could be used to lift us up. Or we can lift it up. We can make it spiritual. We can make it holy. I would say that the simplest definition for holiness, I would say holiness, is potential. Potential. Right? Something that's void of potential, like a deceased body, a deceased person, right? The Torah tells us that that's the highest level of impurity. There's no more potential. Can't do anything. Can't do a mitzvah. Can't do anything. It's the highest form of impurity, right? A living person has the potential of being holy. Why? It can do whatever it wants to do. It has so much potential. It can bring new life into this world. It can do mitzvahs. It can do charity. It can do acts of kindness. It can do incredible things. Potential is holiness. Right? So that's just one aspect of it. Shabbos is a time where we gather all of our potential. Right? We take it easy from being proactive. We take it easy from trying to do more things and new things and creative things. Shabbos is a time where we sit back and we gear up for another week where we're going to accomplish. Right? We stop, we think, we evaluate. We can also look back at the previous week and enjoy it. Right? We all have digital cameras, right? We all have smartphones, right? You know what my wife and I realized recently? We don't print pictures as much as we used to, right? But guess what? If you want to look at pictures on Shabbos, you're going to have to print them, right? We'll keep Costco print in business, right? Why? Because we can't use the digital devices anymore on Shabbos. But it's an opportunity for you to gather around with your children, with your family, and look at pictures and talk. It's the most amazing thing. We don't have television to worry about. We don't have news to worry about. We don't have anything in the world to worry about. The world shuts down for 25 hours. We don't have cell phones, no Facebook, nothing. Shabbos is a day that we are completely disconnected. And that in itself is the greatest gift. The fact that we can just unplug. We don't have anything in the world to worry about. God says all of your needs for Shabbos is on me. Right? Think of the potential that can come out of Shabbos. Think of the holiness that's embedded within us on Shabbos. And it's such a special day. Right? So this is something about Shabbos. We can talk about Shabbos for a lifetime. Right? We can stay here and talk and talk and talk. But I wanted to give some time for questions about Shabbos. So that's a brief introduction that Shabbos is more than just a day of rest. It's a day of holiness and it's a day of potential. Any questions?